let's jump right into it. Now, I'm breaking rules. I'm living on the wild side today because instead of going straight from 10 to 16, I'd like to hit verse 10. We're going to skip 11, 12, and 13. I'm going to come back to that. But this way we have one cohesive thought from verse 10, which connects to verses 14 and 16. And then we'll go back and I just realized, like your eyes are like glazing over. I'm like, they get it. Okay, I'm going to go back to it. Let's jump into the text. He has just talked about rejoicing in the Lord, anxiety, casting that anxiety on the Lord, replacing all that anxiety with good thoughts. What is good, true, lovely, all those things, and the God of peace is with them. He's not done. He continues on. I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. We're going to verse 14. We're going to continue with that thought. Yet it was kind of you to share my trouble. And you Philippians yourselves know that in the beginning of the gospel, so he's just going back to whenever the gospel was introduced, in other words, in Philippi. That's what he's referencing. That in the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church entered into partnership with me in the giving and receiving. So they gave and Paul received, okay? No church entered into partnership, and by the way, partnership, that's koinonia, that is biblical fellowship. That's one of the ways that the New Testament defines fellowship. Sometimes I'm not going to get off on this, but I got to say this. Sometimes we use the term fellowship a little more loosely than they did in the New Testament. And that's why I want to talk about a little bit about that next week. Okay, but you entered into that giving, that partnership, that fellowship with me in giving and receiving, except you only. Even in Thessalonica, you sent me help for my needs once and again. Okay, so what we're going to talk about, first of all, is they've revived their concern again. They're helping him, but he takes them back memory lane to whenever they first helped him. Remember, whenever he's writing this, it's been about 10 years since he first visited them, okay? And now he's going back memory lane and whenever they first helped him, the earlier gifts. So in Acts chapter 16, and by the way, really kind of cool trick, when you're thinking about New Testament letters, Ephesians, Philippians, Thessalonians, Ephesians. Did I already say that? I think I already said that. What am I forgetting here? Philippi, Thessalonica, Corinthians. Thank you. Think about it this way. Acts chapter 16, the gospel is preached in Philippi. So remember, when you're reading Philippians, go to Acts 16. Acts chapter 17, he travels to Thessalonica and Berea. Whenever you're reading 1st and 2nd Thessalonians and you want the background, go to Acts 17. The church at Corinth, in Acts 18, he leaves Macedonia, goes into Achaia, a new district. When you're reading 1st and 2nd Corinthians, your background begins in Acts 18. And for a bonus, Acts 19, he goes into Ephesus. So whenever you're reading Ephesians, go back to Acts 19. And a double bonus, Acts 20 also, he talks to the Ephesian elders. Okay, but for the time being, he goes to Philippi in Acts 16. He preaches the gospel. He then traveled 90 miles away to the west. Am I getting that backwards? To Thessalonica. It's at this point that they end up helping him at least twice. This new church sends relief to him twice. Yourselves, in the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church entered into partnership with me in giving and receiving except you only. Even in Thessalonica, you sent me help for my needs once and again. Okay, the nature of me, whenever I go through these book studies, we get into a little bit of the weeds, and I'm going to try not to get too much into this, but whenever you're doing your own more thorough study of Philippians, whenever you get to verses 15 and 16, the ones that I just read, you're trying to figure out what exactly was going on. And there are two interpretations of this. One of the interpretations is that there are two different times that he received help. Twice by Philippi whenever he's in Thessalonica, And then once, when he left Macedonia, another time he received help from them. And those that interpret it that way, they believe that that's the help that he received in reference in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, if you're taking note, verses 8 and 9. Okay? So the church at Philippi helped him a couple of times whenever he was in Thessalonica, and then he left Macedonia, and they helped him again, and they believe that's what he's writing about in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Another interpretation, and for whatever it's worth, this is where I'm at today, is that verse 16 is actually explaining verse 15, and they're talking about the same event. The reason why we get tripped up is because whenever it translates into the English, when I left Macedonia, it paints a very clear picture in your head. He was in Thessalonica, he leaves Macedonia and goes somewhere else. But the problem is the Greek can have the ideas like, as I was leaving. So in other words, when I was making my way out of the district, I was in Philippi and then Thessalonica and Berea, you guys sent me help. Twice, at least. And furthermore, one of the reasons why I'm persuaded to believe that is because that last line, even in Thessalonica, it translated for even in Thessalonica. It ties verse 16 back to verse 15, explaining verse 15. You can make it to heaven regardless of either translation or interpretation, okay? We're not drawing lines on this. I'm just trying to explain to you that that's where I'm at. Also, as a side note, in that passage in 2 Thessalonians 11, 8, 9, Paul said, I robbed other churches. Well, here he talks about that no other church entered into fellowship. There's another argument I could give, but I can see the glossiness of the eyes, and I'm going to go ahead and move on. Point being, they helped him. From the get-go, they helped him. Not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that increases to your credit. I have received full payment and more. I am well supplied, having received from Epaphroditus, and again, that's brother that was mentioned earlier in chapter 2, the gifts you sent, a fragrant offering, a sacrifice acceptable and pleasing to God, and my God will supply every need of yours according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus. So we had the past gifts, and now we have the present gifts, and that was those sent by the hands of Epaphroditus. And just very quickly, remember that he sends the gifts. Epaphroditus does even better than that. He remains with Paul. He almost dies. Paul's concerned about this. He knows the congregation's concerned about this. He's sending Epaphroditus back to the congregation. But here's the other thing. There's another kind of gift, if you will. And that what Paul says, not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that increases to your credit. It wasn't what the gift did for him. Really what Paul is saying is what it did for you. Now, can I just say this again? This coming from the man who writes this, a man who's in prison, he's not belittling the gift. He says, listen, I received it. Thank you so much. I am totally good. But what I really loved is not what I got, but what this does for you. God, when he sees this, he credits you. Don't overthink that passage. Don't go legalistic with that passage. That's nonsense. You know what he's saying. What I love about this is that God sees this, and he's going to credit you faith in that. The great thing that Paul, in his time, what he sees is that not only now I'm being helped, but I'm just seeing how all the parts of this machine work together, and I'm seeing also how you continue to grow in your participation, in your faith, in your belief, and the trust in Jesus Christ. I tell you what, you gifted me, but you gifted yourself. There's another thing about this and how he views it. Not only that, he says, the gifts that you sent, a fragrant offering, a sacrifice acceptable and pleasing to God. Oh, Paul, calm down, such flowery speech. No. This was a reality. You see this kind of language as early. Genesis chapter 8, look at this. After the flood, Genesis chapter 8, after the flood, and you're going to see Noah sacrifice to the Lord. I'm in Genesis chapter 8, verse 20 and 21. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. Listen, if Paul's being dramatic, the Lord's being dramatic. And the Lord's not being dramatic. Does the Lord have a nose? Does the Lord have a physical heart? I mean, isn't that a beautiful thing? The Lord is kind of articulating himself through the Holy Spirit to this writer. You know, whenever Noah sacrificed that to me, I smelled a pleasing aroma. I said in my heart, And so what he's wanting the brethren at Philippi to know, he goes, I'm going to go even deeper. Whenever you did that, it was a pleasing aroma to God. It was an acceptable sacrifice to your God. The beautiful thing about Paul, and that I know I'm trying to do better about this, I invite you to grow with me in this area, is that the guy just never took his spiritual glasses off. It wasn't just life. Like, things weren't just happening. No, there was always something deeper. Whether that's a bad or a good thing, Paul looked at life with spiritual lenses. Oh, Paul, we helped you. Oh, yeah, I mean, yes, you helped me. You helped yourself. God noticed this, and you pleased Jehovah God whenever you did that. Just a kind reminder. Whenever we're talking to each other, whenever we're talking to people outside the body, see, you're the kind of people that have been equipped with spiritual glasses. The world, they don't have them. The world says things, and they don't even understand the depth of what they're saying. Also be careful, brethren, because many times we get carried along with the, we kind of call it the cultural current. And we will say things or go along with things. I've got nothing in particular in mind. But we do it without putting our spiritual glasses on first. We need to do that with the world, but we also need to do that with each other. And I mean that not in only one sense. I mean that in the positive and the negative. Sometimes your brethren are doing wonderful things and they don't realize what they're doing. And they need to hear from you. Do you understand what you're doing? But also sometimes we're going down roads we need not travel, and we need to go, do you understand what you're doing? Okay, fair enough. Let's continue on. Here we go. Back to the good stuff right in between, okay? The earlier gift, the present gift, but sandwiched in between that, he says, not that I'm speaking of being in need. Again, he rejoiced because they revived his concern from him, okay? He says, not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and in every circumstance. Here again, all these all-encompassing terms that he's using in this letter. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. And now here it is, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things, brothers. And we love to use this verse, and we love to throw it to people. And God bless you. But two things, you need to know what he's talking about. And number two, you better believe it when you say it. Sean, you better know what he's talking about. And Sean, you better believe it when you say it. So let's consider this for just a moment. Being content, is that an innate thing, or is it something learned? Know any better, I would look around. There's some people that just seem to just have it in them. They're just people in life, they're just super positive. They're just incredibly happy with whatever's going on, generally speaking. You know these people, right? One of ours, in particular, seems to just have this ability. Just, and there may be something to that. But at the end of the day, even if there is a little bit of just that natural personality, Satan will tempt that. He will stretch that. He will see how solid you are. At the end of the day, here's what Paul said. He says, not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Because it's not always easy. The secret, he says, I've got the secret. I've learned the secret of facing plenty. I have perfected yo-yo dieting, and I have had a lot of people out there that have told me they have the secret that I need. The reality is that I don't have discipline, and there it is, and that's going to uncomplicate everything. But everyone's got a secret for something. No, Paul had a secret. We're going to talk about it. Okay, the secret to being content. And we'll see if you're excited with his answer, kind of like last week. He had an answer about anxiety, prayer. How are you feeling about that? By the way, side note, super encouraged by you because I had at least a couple of text emails this week, and you were taking it to heart. And sounds like you had the God of peace and the peace of God with you this week. God bless you in that. What's the secret? The secret to being content. So I was reading a commentary this week, and anymore, it's not that I don't like to hear what guys have to say about a passage, but anymore I like to see what a person thinks about the passage. I know what you have to say about it, but what do you think about it? What kind of impact? What does that mean to you? And one man, Barclay, is commenting on this, and apparently this Greek word, content, was the favorite word of the Stoics. The Stoic philosophers, this was their main word. It was their aim. Content means being totally, absolutely self-sufficient. Many of the Stoic philosophers, their aim was to have no emotion at all. Here's the thought process. Listen, God has a will. It is what it is. So you might as well accept it and quit crying over it. And the faster you can get to that, the better you're going to do. Now, I'm not saying every Stoic philosopher went that far, but pretty much. Matter of fact, I was reading. So one of the philosophers, he says, here's how we're going to go about this. Let's start with small things. Let's go to kitchen utensils, okay? A bowl breaks. You say, I don't care. Let's move it up a notch. You got a pet dog. You got a horse. Something happens to it. It dies. You go, I don't care. You get good enough at this. You work hard enough. Eventually, you can take the most dearest person to you, the love of your life. Something horrific happens to them. They die. And you say, I don't care. That's horrible. That is absolutely horrible. Barclay wrote this. He said, the Stoics said, I will learn content by a deliberate act of my own will. Paul said, I can do all things through Christ who infuses his strength into me. For the Stoic, contentment was a human achievement. For Paul, it was a divine gift. The Stoic was self-sufficient, but Paul was God-sufficient. I don't know if Paul was trying to do a play on words, but if he did, touche, Paul. Oh, yeah, I can be totally content, totally self-sufficient. You want to know my secret? God. The Stoics go, oh, God. God is my answer, he said. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but let me hit something obvious. Let's hit the competition between God and gold, if you will, right? Jesus already said it. Listen, I'm going to simplify this for you. You cannot serve two masters. You can't. You're going to love the one, you're going to hate the other. So which God are you going to serve? We want to balance this out. Had some good conversation this week. I thought it's worthwhile looking at these passages. Look with me in 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. Low-hanging fruit, when we talk about being content, we're talking about physical things that we have, things we don't have. And typically we talk about money. Are you content with your financial situation? It causes a lot of grief in marriages, by the way. I don't know if you've ever heard that one before. Money. Here's what Paul wrote to Timothy. I'm in 1 Timothy 6 through 10. But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, if you just isolated this passage, I can understand why someone says, that's why you just need to get rid of everything. Listen, you brought nothing into the world, you can take nothing out of the world. Things and money are the devil. Get rid of them. Matter of fact, one of you is reading through a book right now on second century era Christianity, and their whole thing is like, if you've got something, you must have done something bad to get it. So get rid of it all. But the thing is that that's not. I mean, we still. There's a lot of. Listen, I love the concept of minimalism, and I like things being neat and clean and decluttered. Okay, I would not call myself a minimalist, but I get it. And I understand the wisdom behind it. Listen, Paul, when he was talking about asceticism in Colossians chapter 2, do not eat, do not take, do not touch. He says, listen, the thing is, that actually has the appearance, he says, of being very right on, of being very godly, but it actually isn't helping. It actually isn't helping. The thing is that if you continue on in this letter, look at this. Now, we're skipping forward a few verses. I'm in verse 17. As for the rich in this present age, rebuke them and tell them to give away everything. Did I get that right? Okay. As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. He says, you want to be rich in Christ. You want to have an abundance, give it abundance, okay? But he didn't say give it all away. He just didn't. He didn't say that. Listen, Jesus lived around rich people, and we could talk about them in the negative, but we could also talk about them in the positive. By the way, you know, Jesus, a tomb was given to him by a little someone. Now, I'm with you, though. Here, can I just level with you? The totality of scriptures, I have learned this. Jesus and God seem to be saying most people don't do well with riches. Do you have a problem with me saying that? We can talk about that, but there's also a reality. I don't think most people do well with riches. Also, here's another reality. You don't have to be rich to love money. A lot of poor people love money. That's the problem. Okay? But what he's saying is that we need to find satisfaction in the richness of Jesus Christ. And if you have the physical goods, then do good with them. Hebrews chapter 13. Look at this passage. Hebrews chapter 13. This is Hebrews 13, 5 and 6. The Hebrew writer put it this way: keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. And I love this. What can man do to me? Okay, one of these sayings, again, that it can be easier said than done, but the Hebrew writer is saying this. You know what I have? I have the Lord. And that's it. You can leave and desert me. You can threaten me. The Lord doesn't leave me or desert me. And the Lord is my helper. So I'm good. As far as the material, here's where I think probably where most of us, although some people handle riches and they handle them well, and they do wonderful things with them, and God bless them. But a lot of us probably, our sweet spot is in the Proverbs 30, 7 through 9. 2 things I ask of you, deny them not to me before I die. Remove far from me falsehood and lying. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me. Lest I be full and deny you and say, who's the Lord? There's the rich person that has everything. Who? God, who? I need who? What? Who? Okay? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. Listen, don't tell me that there's no struggles with being rich, and also don't tell me there's no struggles with being poor. Money doesn't help anything. It kind of does. It's kind of nice being in that sweet spot. Is that okay to say? But what Paul's saying is that, but what I learned is that I can be content in whatever situation because these things come and go because I have Jesus. What about talents? We're not talking about gold. I just want to briefly mention this. Talents. You know, sometimes you're not caught up in having things, but do you ever get caught up in like, I need to be liked by everyone? Or I need to be honored by everyone. I need to be popular. I'm thinking about Simon the sorcerer in Acts chapter 8. He's a somebody. And then the apostles get into town and he's a nobody. And he sees the apostles laying hands on other people. And Simon says, can I purchase this so that way this cool ability you have so I can lay my hands on? Of course, he's rebuked. I don't know that he was looking for financial gain. It could have just simply been, I've lost my honor. People know me and I have to be something. Are you content with the talents that you have? Listen, in life, there are Peter preachers and there are Paul preachers. I've already told you which one I relate with. Okay? There are surgeons and there are street sweepers. And we need them all. In the body, there's the mouth. Everyone wants to be the mouth. You don't want everyone to be the mouth. Oh, so you're saying there aren't weaker parts? So there are. I'll level with you. There are weaker parts as we see them. And what Paul says, but we consider them as precious and we guard them and we protect them. There's an eye, a nose, a mouth, a hand. I remember hearing something about Einstein, and this week I was doing my research to make sure I was accurate before I said this. Einstein, brilliant man. You know that, being an Einstein. This guy was totally weird. He was a total weirdo. Do you know that? Einstein was a total weirdo. Horrible husband. Sounds like maybe a bratty kid. He didn't say anything until he was 3 or 4 years old. And his first sentence, he complained about, I think it was his mother's mill. And then they asked him, why haven't you said anything? Why haven't you said anything, Einstein? Why haven't you said anything? He says, because everything had been in order up to this point. Oh! Did you know that Einstein would leave his house and forget to put his pants on? Question for you. If you were given the ability to either choose between the IQ of Einstein or the common sense to put your pants on, which would you choose? Look at you with your pants on. You're doing it. You're doing it. Listen, we need Einsteins and we need pant wearers. All of us have a place in the kingdom. God, by His grace, has given us different abilities, and we are pleased with our lot. Amen? But this is, we get caught up in this kind of stuff. So just as a whole, I guess what I'm asking you, what I'm leaving you with is, are you content with your lot in Jesus Christ? Really hope you are. Because these blessings come from Him, and He is with you. Listen, the challenges I put as I was chewing on this, the difficulty is not in lacking an answer, but in believing in the answer. And it's also that missing element from what we just read, what we studied last week. Here I am, Lord, in my life, and what I've learned is this. I learned not to be anxious over things that are out of my control. I do what I can do, but then I give it to you. And then I'm going to take your goodness and what is right and what is true, and I'm going to be filled with that. And then here's the other element, and then, Lord, whatever it is, I'm going to be content with that. I didn't say anything you haven't heard before. So I guess I just became like every other guy that's tell you how to lose weight. Nothing new. The problem is with us believing it and then executing it with the help of the Lord. Amen? God bless you this week as you do that.